We turn to what was day 56 of the Biden administration. We have brand new revelations tonight about what Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin were up to when it came to trying to ensure the 2020 election ended with the defeat of Joe Biden and the re-election of Donald Trump. The Director of National Intelligence has released a report on how Moscow tried to carry out, in effect, a sequel to its 2016 election interference that was less reliant on actual hacking and cyber attacks and focused more on the people close to Trump. The report says Putin and the Kremlin, quote, authorized and conducted influence operations against the 2020 U.S. presidential election aimed at denigrating President Biden and the Democratic Party, supporting former President Trump, undermining public confidence in the electoral process, and exacerbating socio-political divisions in the U.S. A key element of Moscow's strategy was its use of proxies linked to Russian intelligence to push influence narratives, including misleading or unsubstantiated allegations against President Biden. U.S. media organizations, U.S. officials, and prominent U.S. individuals, including some close to former President Trump and his administration. The report declines to name names, but as the Washington Post reports, the mention of individuals close to the former president, quote, appears to reference Trump's one-time personal lawyer, Rudolph Giuliani, whose repeated meetings with a suspected Russian agent came under scrutiny by U.S. officials. The report from the DNI said Iran also sought to influence the election to hurt Trump's re-election chances, while China didn't bother to get in the game at all, contradicting the former president's frequent assertions. The Justice Department and Homeland Security also released their latest report on claims we heard after the election about foreign governments owning or trying to manipulate voting machines or vote counts.
We're using a foreign company that is owned by Venezuelans who are close to Chavez, are now close to Maduro, have a history. They were founded as a company to fix elections.
What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China in the interference with our elections here in the United States.
The president's lawyers alleging a company called Dominion, which they say started in Venezuela with Cuban money and with the assistance of Smartmatic software, a backdoor is capable of flipping votes.
The Justice Department and Homeland Security found, quote, those claims were not credible. With that, let's bring in our leadoff guests on this Tuesday night. Phil Rucker, Pulitzer Prize-winning senior Washington correspondent for The Washington Post. Claire McCaskill, former Democratic senator from the great state of Missouri. And Malcolm Nance. He's a veteran author and a veteran of naval intelligence, special ops, homeland, and cybersecurity. 36 years working in counterterrorism and intelligence. Earlier this year, he testified before Congress on domestic terrorism. And Malcolm, indeed, given your resume, you are where I'd like to begin tonight. This report today reminds us how close our democracy came. That's constant wording, too. It comes every day. And also reminds us where the talking points came from that we heard out of the mouth of our president and the people around him.
You know, this report is seminal in another way. This is the second time in less than 4 years the U.S. intelligence community has warned that we were attacked again, this time with less direct operations using cyber tools as opposed to what they did in 2016, which was to actually create the narrative. They used more traditional human intelligence tools in this one by an ex-KGB officer who actually ran spies when he was in the KGB. And he used an associate of his personally, a Mr. Derkach, to send information to Rudy Giuliani and other U.S. entities and literally craft a narrative for them to use against now President Biden and his family. And they ran with it. Giuliani was into it before the Ukraine scandal. All of this we now find out was a component of the Kremlin itself and Russian military and clandestine intelligence services, and Americans were neck deep in it.
Claire McCaskill, used to be something like this would upset all 100 members of the U.S. Senate, but that's not going to be the case tomorrow, is it? And we've further learned in this that this was not just out to get Trump reelected. This was out to help the Republican Party writ large.
Yeah, I was thinking about it when I was reading the report today, that there was a time not too long ago that this would have been an earthquake. This would have been seismic. It would have been so big. And let's just say what Rudy Giuliani is. He's a treasonous traitor. You've got to use, I mean, he's also a clown, but he's a treasonous traitor clown, because this is a guy who was working directly with our adversaries, another country, to influence our democracy. And he was a willing participant, as was Ron Johnson, as were many others that played into Putin's hand in this bold and as yet unpunished act of war against the strongest democracy in the world. They are trying to bring democracies to their knees, and they are willing to do anything to get it done, including what this report laid out so clearly.
Phil Rucker, you famously covered the Trump White House, been there, survived that, and wrote about it. What did the Russians understand about the people around this president, the former president, and their ability for garbage in, garbage out to spread their lies?
Well, a couple things that they understood, Brian, and by the way, they learned this over the course of the 4 years of this presidency. They understood that there are a lot of inputs to President Trump. You didn't have to go through any sort of formal policy apparatus or even officials of the U.S. government. You could get people like Rudy Giuliani. You could bend Rudy Giuliani's ear and all of a sudden have a pipeline directly to the President of the United States, because that's how Donald Trump operated in office. They also learned, the Russians did, how gullible Trump and many of his advisors were. They would believe what these Russian agents would say if they thought it would help Trump politically. And that's what happened here with a lot of this misinformation about Joe Biden and about the Biden family. Trump, remember, in 2020, in those months leading up to the election, was behind in virtually all of the polls. He was desperate for some sort of a Hail Mary to reverse his election hopes and to gain an edge over Joe Biden, because he had struggled so much with the coronavirus pandemic and managing that in the minds of voters. And so they would grasp onto information. There was a period in the summer and fall where Trump would hang on to any new discovery relating to Hunter Biden, whether it was true or not. And the Russians knew how easy it would be to try to feed information directly to the president through Rudy Giuliani.
Malcolm, at your suggestion, I follow one or more Twitter so-called breaking news sites that we know to be affiliated with the Russian point of view, if not full-on funding. And it's fascinating, though depressing to watch. Right now, they're into attacking vaccines. If someone gets a cough after the AstraZeneca vaccine, they will point it out. As you have pointed out on this broadcast, a sick adversary is easier to have your way with than a well adversary. Russians also have an interest in getting their vaccine to market in Europe. So tell our viewers how to be better consumers of what they see. This disinformation campaign is not going to go away because our government has mentioned it in a report.
No, it's not going to go away at all. And this is going to take a complete re-engineering of American cyber hygiene. And I think that by the changing of the administrations, we've taken the first step. One of the things that is absolutely abhorrent to the other channels, which have a more propagandistic leaning in the United States and which are operated by Russia Today, which is adored by many people on the right wing in the United States, is the very fact that they craft a message which is negative to the United States but positive to Donald Trump and positive to Russia. And it all goes to their strategic goals. Look, Vladimir Putin was a career KGB officer, not for a reason. He believed in what the Soviet Union believed. Now he believes in money. But he never let go of the strategic goals of dismantling liberal democracy. He himself said liberal democracy is finished and that they need to foster autocracy around the world. The Republican Party agrees with this. So all the messaging that you're going to see from overseas and the messaging that they amplify in the United States to hurt America will always have this message. And one last point, Brian. We may actually be able to see a direct arc from this report to the shooting that happened in Atlanta today, because the Chinese sat back and were looking for stability. But the Russians have been amplifying the message from the Trump administration that all liberals are members of the Communist Chinese Party and that the Chinese attacked us, and that we saw this multifold attack on Asian citizens in the United States. It is incestuous and it is all connected.